You're tuned in to RX Radio.
I don't remember us. We used to say less before we started podcasts.
Yeah, we would just kind of hit record and then sort it out along the way.
And the reason, so you guys don't know this, but we do a lot of, and it might not be apparent to you guys, but we actually do a lot of deliberation prior to recording podcasts. And the deliberation has only increased over time. The amount of front end time we need to compose ourselves in order to be, to be suitable. And imagine this, suitable for the internet.
Oh, man.
Has just grown exponentially over time. Like we used to sit down and be like, what do you want to talk about today? I don't know. Let's talk about bench pressing. Okay, record. Hi, we're going to talk about, but and it's funny because the reason we do that, the reason we take time on the front end is actually large in part to the topic of conversation that has me so frustrated today. So us taking time on the front end before we hit record, mind you, this is two gentlemen who started a podcast a few weeks ago by calling its listeners. I think I called them cocksuckers. I don't know what you called them.
I said motherfuckers. Cocksuckers was in there. Yeah. Yeah.
Endearing. There may have been a cock reference in there. I got a lot of.
Yeah, for sure.
That was in there. Now, again, that was after much deliberation. So you could only imagine what was said prior to us hitting record if those were the first words out of our mouth. And it's an episode today that I didn't want to have to make because I didn't want the world to be in such a place where we needed to release. And look, is this going to be useful? Is anyone going to listen to this and be like, oh, wow, that really changed my behavior? I hope so. I also don't think necessarily our audience is are the primary offenders of this particular behavior.
Right.
So they might, hopefully at the very least, if you guys see alongside or eye to eye with our stance on today's topic, just know you're not alone when you see this poor behavior exhibited in the public discourse. So you'll hopefully listen to this and either maybe have a couple of light bulb moments and change your behavior and the world would be a less frustrating place as a byproduct. Or you'll sit there and think, wow, I've had these thoughts. I have these thoughts routinely. I act in accordance with these thoughts and how much they frustrate me. Thank you, Jordan and Jordan, for recognizing and putting out into the public discourse that this is a thing that needs to be addressed. And of course, what we're talking about is just that. It's public discourse. There's so many different ways to phrase it, right? If you come from particular neighborhoods, you might use the word etiquette, right? Etiquette is a word. Like if you think very classic, there's one of my favorite quotes. I believe it's a Winston Churchill, but there's also this weird phenomenon where every quote sort of gravitates to just being assigned to Winston Churchill because he's such a quotable individual. But it's manners maketh man. It's a very British thing. If you guys have ever been to the UK, there's the politeness. And when we think of the word etiquette, a lot of what we're thinking about is really British derived, right? British cultural norms around human interaction. That's sort of where when you think etiquette, and that could be something as simple as like, never reach across the table, cover your mouth when you sneeze, or say bless you, or don't fork on the left, knife on the right, blade in. Like there's a lot of different etiquettes, and etiquettes are social norms that there's sort of this collective understanding of what's acceptable and what's not. And it's very cultural, right? Like if you're from Japan or you're from mainland China, there's just different norms, and it's not good or bad. It's just an understood norm where a lack of understanding can create some friction. And it's not good or bad. It's just people not understanding where people come from. I think what we've run into is a necessity for outlining social norms in a new culture. And that culture doesn't exist.
Let me just interject and say how much of a problem it is that it's you and I having this conversation on the internet. Like, we're the ones that have been like, you know what, this is enough. This is enough. These kids need to learn. Someone needs to teach these children how to act. And it's by us.
Yeah, this is where quite literally the canary in the bottom of the coal mine taking its last breath.
Man,
it's absolutely. And the thing is, it's very easy to point the finger at young children, right? It's very easy to, I was in Houston a few weeks ago and I went to that gym. Shout out Davey Swole for putting me onto this massive YouTube gym that I went to.
That sounds
and
miserable.
It was quite literally. So here's the thing, and this is part of decorum. Notice what I'm doing right now. I'm about to say something disparaging, but I don't want it to be absolute. The gym itself was probably one of the most impressive structures I've ever seen. So shout out to the guy, I believe his name is Christian Guzman, who made this gym in Houston. It's what an incredible accomplishment for this guy to be able to reinvest into our industry and make such a cool place. Hard stop. Notice what I did there. I gave that. Some people might call that, depending on the neighborhood you grew up in, some people might call that giving him his flowers, right? But that, maybe a little bit more culturally appropriate term for certain parts of the world, right? In classic British etiquette, you might say paying respects, giving someone their flowers and paying respects. Same, right? It's the same thing, cut two different ways from two different cultures, two different neighborhoods, two different walks of life, but an understanding nonetheless that if I'm going to say something disparaging, I want to be very clear about the activity and I want to remove the person from the activity, right? Louis C.K. did a joke once, or he was talking about jokes that he was making, and he's sort of famous for writing comedy that's very on the edge of social acceptability, and he knows that edge very clearly, and he can walk it so well. I think it's something that comedians do better than most other public communicators. They have this ability to flirt and dance with this line of social acceptability and make jokes about things that are very, very close to, if not on the line of social acceptability to joke about. And he was talking about his jokes, and he goes, "I never make fun of who people are. I just make fun of what they do." And I think, okay, fair play, right? And this is what I'm trying to do here. So I went to this gym. It's a magnificent facility, but inside the gym are, they're children. They're under their birthday starts in the year 2000. They've never, and I'm going to try and layer some context even further. Their behavior is their responsibility, but right now it's not actually their fault. And their behavior has been driven in the culture of the internet that has no predetermined cultural etiquette, right? And that bleeds into everyday life. And because their everyday life is just broadcasted simultaneously through social media platforms, right? So it's like I have an empathy to the underlying behavior that is not consistent with the cultural etiquette of the real world, and I'm empathetic to their struggle, and they don't struggle too much, but they do when they interact with me, and because I need to provide friction to let them know that there is a cultural etiquette in the real world, and it may behoove you as a person on this planet to start to impart some of that cultural etiquette into the digital world. And that's what we're going to try to do here today as the two least qualified, irreverent people on, but even we've had enough. So let this be a cry for help. Let you heed this warning. Send this to your friends, because I want to go through like some of your, like, here's a term that always comes to mind. And it's probably one of the best compliments that I've gotten in my professional career. And there's a lot of different ways to say it. The way it was said to me was, as a close friend of mine, his name is Troy Jones. Troy Jones, his OG strength coach in the NFL. Everyone knows Troy Jones. And we'd known each other for a handful of years. And he goes, "You know what I like about you?" He goes, "You know how to move. You move correct." And I was like, that to me is one of the best compliments ever. And what I want to get out of today is to hopefully lend some insight on how to move correctly, right? Moving correctly on the internet and superimposing your internet decorum and your internet etiquette with your personal etiquette. What a powerful tool the internet is to be able to magnify your personal etiquette in real life and open up opportunities for you in real life. One of the things, I was just in Vail, Colorado with a handful of colleagues. Now, I'm one of few, we are two of very few group of people who do a lot of the media side, accrue social media following, do podcasts and things like this. But we could walk into high-level training rooms, and still have the respect of those, whether they're elders or people who are just not, they don't use this as a part of their business, still have the respect of those people. My job my goal when I got started was to gain the respect of people that no one has ever heard of, right? Your Poliquins, your Thibodeaus, your Charlie Francis's, like that's like really a guiding filter of like, I could make content that easily, goes viral, but I would lose the respect and I would lose the opportunities in real life to be in these rooms. So I had someone say that to me last week. Like, everyone now is kind of getting on board with the idea of digital business and scalability and the importance of content as a vertical within a business, no different than legal, no different than bookkeeping or finance or accounting. If you take the media side seriously, also hilarious that this is coming from us, but we do take it seriously. If you take it seriously as all these other parts of a business, you can reap benefit from it. So I guess where I want to start today is if you were to list out a handful of digital etiquette practices.
Oh God.
That you think would help someone as a reference in their career to be able to be respected both online and in person, still be true to themselves, where would you even begin to start? Because some of it I think is going to be very binary of like, hey, do not do this. Don't repost, a share, like, comment, whatever. Like I want this to be granular because I think the problem is that it's worth addressing.
Yeah. And this is very truly going to be me starting from the beginning because this isn't something I've really put thought into before. So you guys can listen to me struggle through actually thinking using my brain. But the reason I haven't put thought into it before is something that we've talked about on this podcast in different capacities, is that the way that I approach the internet is I'm posting things that stem from portions or interactions that I've had in real life, right? So it's my internet profiles are an extension of anyways, my internet profiles are an extension of who I am in real life, because that's the base for all this stuff, is that I have conversations, I have interactions, I have conversations on the podcast, and I think of ideas and I'm like, you know what, this is something that people need to hear. So I'm going to put it on my Instagram. We're going to talk about it on the podcast, whatever means you're using. So it's something that it's not necessarily something I'm doing for the internet. It's something that is applicable to my real life. And a lot of what my life revolves around is education around training, whether that's through Prescript, whether that's through RX Radio, whether that's people that I'm helping in my practice, whether that's people I'm coaching in person, online. Like, that's what I dedicate a lot of my time to. And a lot of conversations and ideas come out of that. So maybe this starts with my approach towards content creation, because content creation for me is it's an extension of a service that I offer. Right. So it's a look into the way that I operate, in the way that I think in my day-to-day life, in the things that essentially the things that I sell. Right. I'm selling a service here. So that's where a lot of my content creation comes from. And with that interfacing with the internet creates a little bit of frustration for me, because the things on the internet that tend to do well are more entertainment based. Like, a lot of the things that I come across on the internet, aside from like violent murderous scenes that I send you, right? Exactly. My algorithm, like my brain, is very fucked. But a lot of it is like entertainment type stuff, like a lot of stand-up comedian clips, like things like this. So Instagram particularly is a means of grabbing attention, and the way that you're going to do that is through entertaining people, which is very different than what you and I do on a day-to-day basis, which is helping people, which there are people that use it for that, but it's not the best means of educating people or helping people through Instagram. So something that I found, and this is like a very particular example for me and stuff that I put out, because I do put out some like kind of trashy content, like just fucking degrading the internet. But the thing is, that comes from me degrading people in real life.
Right. Yes,
we'll start
I've
there.
witnessed
It's like and I mean, take that with a grain of salt, but like I care a lot about the people that I coach, but I give them a very tough form of love when I coach them, is because I give them the education and I give them the tools that they need to know what they need to work on, what's right, what's wrong. And sometimes the difference is just effort. So I'll make posts saying like, don't be a bitch or don't be a pussy about it. Like, get the work done. And that's something that, like, if you were one of my athletes, if I was helping you online, if you did a consult to me, you'd probably hear those words at some point. But it's not coming from a place of like attacking who you are. It's noticing what you're doing. It's like, hey, like, I know you have a higher level of effort than that. I want to see it. That's where that comes from. So it comes from a place of caring and a place of a mutual understanding that I'm not just like, I'm not being mean to people. I'm like telling you like, hey, like, I want better from you. So that's where some of that stuff comes from. And obviously there's a lot of podcast clips and like specific like informational clips that I'll make for my Instagram. But the ones that always reach the furthest are the ones of me saying the dumbest shit. And it's frustrating to me because, taking it back to your original point, the way that I look at this and the way that I would start your etiquette on the internet is your internet profile is it's a reflection of you directly. And I look at it as almost a resume. So what is the job that you're trying to get? And is your profile going to be consistent with the way that you would write a resume about it? And if the job you're trying to get is and I'm really bad with this because I don't follow any influencers. I don't know people that like do this stuff, the people with millions of followers. But one that I do know, because he's been around forever, and I just remember him like saying Jaeger bombs like 100 times. Dom Mazzetti. He's like a fitness influencer, like gag joke entertainer kind of guy. And someone like him, he's trying to entertain. Or like I think Larry Wheels is one that's probably a little more relevant now, right? He does like a lot of like stuff for the likes and the views and like funny stuff or like crazy feats of strength type stuff. Like, okay, so he wants to be that guy. He wants to be known for putting stuff out there on the internet that is entertainment, flashy. Like, people are going to go and look at that and laugh. And he probably has like a supplement sponsorship or something that he's trying to sell with a discount code. And like, that's the job that he's trying to get. In terms of what you and I do, I want to speak towards a lot of coaches, athletes, and people that I want to respect me for what I know about training. So a lot of the content that I put out there is based around spreading information, spreading thoughts that I think are either uh, less known or underutilized in training, or my thoughts on particular relevant pieces of training, and then posting my training, because I want people to know, like, I'm not just here to tell you how to train. Like, I'm going to go in, and the reason I'm going to call you a bitch is because I'm going to try and kill myself under a barbell today. And I'm not going to be a bitch about it. And I want to lead by examples. Like, look, this guy talks a lot of shit about training. Why should I listen to him? It's like, because like, he's willing to die for it. So that's kind of the way that I would start this conversation, is like, look at your profile as a resume for the job that you want to get. Like, you're speaking to a particular audience, and then people are going to know you for the message that you continually send. So if the message that you're continually sending is conflicting with who you are or who you want to be perceived as or the job that you're trying to get, then that's a disconnect that you're going to have. And it's just going to make some sort of frustration around that. But in even more of a broad sense, I think the way that people approach that and the way that people kind of choose the way that they're going to move on the internet, it comes down to a set of values that they have that maybe has been developed in the real world and transfers to online, which is kind of what I'm describing here, is that you and I, we went through our childhood without an Instagram profile. There were real consequences to the actions that we took, like even from and that's where all this stems from, is that. And I think the way I think of this is you need loss, right? You need loss as a consequence of an action to change your behavior. Because if you don't have that, then you're not going to change direction. There's no real repercussion. There's no sensation of, okay, I did this and I now I'm worse off for doing that thing. So I need to change the way I approach this in the future. I need to change the decision that I made next time I'm confronted with that. For me and for you, I'm sure I've lost teeth. Like that's the loss that I've had. Like, yeah, right. So once you have a consequence, or like even when I was like a younger kid, like you act up in public, like your parents, they send you to the room, or you lose TV, or whatever the consequence was, you acted a certain way, they took something away, so now you change the behavior and you correct if you don't want to lose that thing in the future. So whatever that thing is, whether that's you don't want to lose on the internet likes, views, followers, or in a more practical sense, because of the way you conduct yourself on the internet, you don't want to lose business and money and quality of life, then there needs to be some sort of consequence in place. And I think that's where people that are growing up on the internet don't understand that social intelligence, we'll call it, the emotional intelligence of understanding that this is how you need to act, because there's never been a consequence around that. Like you get into an argument in the comment section, or you post something offensive, and like there's a lot of kind of perpetuation of what you're the message you're sending, the things that you're doing, the way that you're acting on the internet, because people follow you for a certain reason. So you get a lot of positive reinforcement for things that, like, if I solely created content based off the things that reach the furthest or get the most likes, I'd have a trash profile. It would just be me calling people bitches and pussies and like adding no value to anything. And that's it takes a certain level of understanding to know that, okay, yeah, that message reaches further, but is that the message that I want to send? Like what is the consequence for me solely sending that message? Maybe I have more Instagram followers. Maybe I gain, a little bit of attention from people that I don't care about, versus understanding like, no, I want to send a message to the few people that follow me, that I respect, that I want them to see that message and be like, you know what, I fuck with this guy. And that's the thing, is there's so many fewer of them than there are people that are going to like a dick joke or something dumb that you post on the internet, or like, some huge dude painting himself green and like picking up midgets, whatever the fuck happens on the internet. Like that's, I, it
So I
happens on
saw
the
that
internet.
today. I saw
Yeah,
it
right.
today,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
Halloween's coming. There's going to be a lot more. If you're a midget out there, be careful.
Right.
It's about to get better or worse before it gets better.
Right. So that's the thing. It's gonna get worse before it gets better. Uh, so I guess that those are like the kind of takeaways in terms of a starting point for me, is like, what's the message you're trying to send? Like, what's the job you're trying to get? What are you interviewing for? And what's your resume saying about you? Your resume being your social presence. And then outside of that is what are the consequences? Because whether you see them, whether you feel them or not, there are consequences to the way that you conduct yourself on a day-to-day basis or on the internet. And the thing about it on the internet is you might never know what the consequences are. You conducting yourself a certain way versus another way is like me talking about exercise and spreading things that I think are valuable, even though they're not going to be as popular on the internet. The consequence of that is I might get the attention of someone that I admire, and I might form a connection with them, and they might be in my network, and that might open up other opportunities, whether it's like networking, whether it's learning from that person, or sharing ideas, or creating an interaction that I might not have had otherwise. Versus if I just have a low value, like entertainment type message that I'm sending out there, I might just get a lot of positive reinforcement or those dopamine hits from people that all I don't care what their opinion is. So who are you seeking the approval of? Is it people that you want the approval of, or is it just some imaginary number you want to see on a screen?
Yeah, I mean, you covered a lot, and some of it might be reiteration, but I think the idea of consequence is interesting. I think you struck on something that's very deep to human psychology, which is the idea of loss aversion.
Yeah.
That gaining things is less important to motivating people than losing things is.
Mm-hmm.
The hard part with the internet is what you potentially might lose is ill-defined and speculative at best, and
Right.
sometimes can be hard to trace back to the internet. I keep a very accurate inventory of how I've gotten to where I am. And I think about the role that the internet has played in that, like superimposing an avatar of myself on the internet as well as me as a real person. And given the nature of our business and the industry that we work in, I can tie some of my most valuable friendships, and which have evolved into business relationships in some cases, and to some sort of interaction on the internet. Like you said, I don't want to reach all the people. I want to reach the right people, and I don't want to meet them with the right message. I want to reach them with my message, right? Yeah. And I think there's a lot of layers of discernment that you need to go through to figure out what those things are, and those act as your guide rails to. And it's not just about creating content. That's something I want to get clear, right? Creating content, I think, in the totality of the conversation, as so far as the meaningful delineation of internet etiquette, more specifically in the fitness space, I think is really low tier when it comes to the scope of understanding the impact of etiquette on your potential opportunities and growth. Like, it's easy for us to sit here, and I don't think it would blow anyone's socks off to be like, all right, if we're just going to do shit posts that are, memes and jokes about trying to put other people down and put us ahead, you're going to attract a certain type of audience. It's going to limit your growth. You're going to be, you might not be surprised that you end up in the state you're in selling certain products to certain people who are drawn to that certain type of behavior. The internet decorum, as so far as it can help you move forward in the real world or even in the digital world, commenting or not commenting, tagging or not tagging, reposting versus not reposting. Like, one of the things that I see, and there's been some cases of this lately, and it's something where I want the outcome to be positive. Like, I want people to move, to progress forward, because some of it might just be, like, if I have friends who've traveled to mainland China, and the social decorum in mainland China is very different than here, right? There's from what I've heard, and I have never been, the respective personal space is not really a thing. There's so many people. You might notice this if you've ever been to India. Like, it's not good or bad, because good or bad is relative to the set of norms that you're brought up in. So when you get into the digital space, you get to establish your own norms, and the adherence to those norms, which could be an embodiment of values and how you want to be perceived, and trying hard to narrow that dissonance. Adherence to those norms, those values, will get you exactly where you need to be, not where you want to be. And because what you want is probably money and cars and fucking to live in Bali or whatever. It's not what you need, right? You need to have a clear fucking head. You need to not be stressed out about this thing that lives rent-free in your pocket. That's what you need. And whatever you get as a consequence of getting what you need ends up being more than what you would ever want, right? And I think there's so many layers to this, because people are, they're trying to tag their way to the top, or I'm speaking about a very specific case that's happened to me quite recently. And it's like, we work in a unique space with people with high social profiles, right? Like, we're down in Florida. We work with pro athletes, and one of the conversations we'll have with our L3 students specifically is like, do not, under any circumstances, tag the athletes you are working with, right? Like, their privacy is a virtue to them. It's something that they don't have a lot of, and we are there to do a job. We are a part of a team. We are there to coach and assist them. We are not there to gain. And if you and here's where, getting what you want and getting what you need, if you play the man and you focus on the relationship, there's a decent amount of images on the internet of you and myself with very notable people. What people don't realize is that there's probably 100 times more interactions, maybe more than 100 times, that we've had that you guys will never know about, right? So for what the tip of the iceberg that we discussed, that you guys see when it comes to our interaction with very high level individuals, is only built off of relationships and a superimposition of our relationship with that person, the trust we built, and their values around sharing stuff on the internet, not ours. So what you see has been greenlit by those people who their values, like, oh, for whatever reason, they generate content to further their social presence and their brand as a pro athlete. Or some of them are very direct, like, I want to try and help you out. If posting about this would help you, I'm going to post it. And it's their values that get to, we work for them. But for every one post that you see, you have to understand. And I think the understanding of this is going to play into the loss aversion psychology conversation that you brought up. For every one of those pictures that you might see of, one of us with a pro athlete that was put there by the discernment or good graces or values of that athlete and co-signed on that and brought to the table by them, never asked for a picture or anything. Everyone's there's an unspoken etiquette to working in this space. And what you need to understand is the opportunities come faster and closer between if you can exercise this discernment. So if you operate like this is the last pro athlete you're ever going to see, it might be the last pro athlete you're ever going to see. Because for every one picture of one of us with a pro athlete, there's probably, I don't know, if I can do the math, maybe 250 times more interactions that we've had with athletes that you guys have no idea about, right? So what you see on the internet is a small representation of what they want you to see of us interacting with the world. But there's a lot more to be had. There's a lot more to be gained as far as relationship, trust, reputation, which is big. And reputation takes, a lifetime to build, but only seconds to tear down. That should be like a huge, 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 huge focus. If your internet presence doesn't have a filter of how could this affect my reputation, you need to put that at the absolute top of your fucking filtering list before you hit that send button. I cannot tell you how, and this is speaking from being on the other side of people who maybe don't act with a consistent set of values on the internet as they do in real life. I can't tell you what it's done to my perception of some people and the opportunities that they've lost from damaging their reputation by not moving correctly on the internet, right? Like you and I are in positions where we need people, and we're so lucky to have the people in the pre-script circle all over the world that I don't hesitate for a second to be like, Dom Kadri, level 3 coach, came in from the Czech Republic. One of my close friends was heading over there and he needed a treatment table. Brad Watson, Cairo friend of ours back in school, just saw him in Kelowna a few weeks ago. And Brad knows that we have people all over. He trusts, and now Brad's not like a social media guy. Now Brad is a guy that when I got into practice and even last going off in school, he's a guy when I said earlier, I do this to gain the respect of those people who you've never heard of. Brad Watson is probably a guy you've never heard of, but if you ask any person in a particular pro sport who he is, they know exactly who the fuck he is. Why? Because he's built an unbelievable reputation in real life. He asked me, hey, I'm going to the Czech Republic. I go, no problem. Dom Kadri, got you sorted, whatever you need. Dom brought a table down with an hour and a half drive into Prague when he was over there for a world championship of a particular sport, and no problem. And I feel such a confidence of being like, yep, Dom, this is now Brad and Dom, colleagues, connected, those opportunities to meet and network and be able to mutually benefit are so unbelievably ever present in the real world. And so when you're going through and you're thinking about your reputation and you're creating content, or more specifically, you're thinking about tagging someone in something, maybe it's someone you don't know or never met, and your focus is on building a social network rather than a real network of people who you can call, that you've met in real life, that you've been connected through and vetted through trusted sources. Know that those are the opportunities you're losing. Every opportunity you want is on the table with every single reshare, post, tag, whatever. And it's hard to see because you can get blinded by the immediacy of the dopamine hits of the likes. You know what you're trading? You know what you're trading your reputation for numbers on a screen, like you said. And do you know what your reputation can get you? Do you know where it can go? Do you know where it can lead you if you know how to fucking exercise an ounce of discernment? You don't know. I don't know. I try to, and I'm sure there's opportunities I've left on the table. right? I'm sure there's times on the internet where I've done something and someone, an agent, a player who may have thought about reaching out, who has heard of me, goes, no, I don't like the way that guy moves. I'm sure of that. And I think about that every single time I post. I don't near you. You can attest to this. We talk about social media volume of posting and frequency for years. My frequency of posting has dropped precipitously over the last 3 to 4 years. The opportunities that we've had as a company, you and I as professionals, has grown exponentially. The amount of rooms that we can get asked to go into in private, the amount you and I have experienced just professionally and as friends over the last 3 years is multiple orders of magnitude more impactful to my life than the 6, 7, 8 years before that we knew each other. And one of the correlations is I am much more specific, and I think much more about my reputation. I think much more about my social etiquette online and how that may or may not open or close doors for me. And I know I still get it wrong. I know I still post stuff out of ego, out of instinct, out of reaction. And I know I lose opportunities as a consequence. But if you can think, people do not, and respect is another thing I wanted to talk about. Because people do not respect the power of this, right? This fucking 6.1 inch rectangle that you have in your pocket. You need to respect the power of that and its ability to impact your life. What is in your hand right now? If you're listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, subscribe. What is in your hand is a catalyst. It's nuclear, right? Like its ability to change the course of your life is like, imagine if you were walking around with the nuclear launch codes and you could just fucking, send Pyongyang back to the fucking Stone Ages. You could set your life back to the Stone Ages, or you could illuminate a future that you have no idea how good it can be. And people take that responsibility at their peril. And you watch people they wonder why they're not in the position. It's like, look, I think of Killian often with this in this conversation, because here's a guy, congratulations, Killian, taking on assistant performance director role at House of Athlete Tampa. Unbelievable. How often does Killian post?
Oh man, he's in the stories, but the actual posts, like quarterly.
Quarterly, right? And it's like, do you ever see him play in the mud online? Ever?
No, he's
right.
one that I think leverages online very well. And the way that I've seen that he does it is not a way that anyone would see, because I see it from hearing about it, from talking to him, is that he's talking to people on the internet. He's not posting, right? He's not getting attention to people through his posts. Maybe he's getting, some notoriety through networks and connections, but that's a point I was thinking of as you were speaking, is the value of an interaction on the internet. There's high value and then there's low value interactions. One, like you're saying, like if you were I to work with a specific player with a large following, if I were to get a picture of us that maybe they didn't even know about, and I were to post it and I were to tag them in it, and kind of, I think of it as more like clout chasing. If I'm trying to leech off their network, that's a very low value interaction. It's like no different than me running into this guy in the supermarket and asking for an autograph, right? It's a very low value interaction on the internet in terms of value, perceived value. Even it's like, yes, people see that you're with this person, but like I'm trying to take something from them in that interaction. As opposed to a very high value interaction, it's not going to happen based off of social media, social networking. It's going to happen in person, right? If you make a change for that player and you leave an impact on them, and you can positively impact them through that interaction that you had, that there just so happens to be a picture of, and say they're the one that posts that and they shout you out, or they're the one that's saying like, hey, like I fuck with this guy. That's a high value interaction, because now it went from you clout chasing someone with the network to someone that knows that they have a network and knows that they have swing and power online, vouching for you because of what you were to them. That's a high value interaction. And that's what I've seen with Killian is he can create these high value interactions because of the way that he moves outside of the social media eye, right? Because of the conversations he has, because of the work that he does. And that's why he's more successful at leveraging social media as a platform, because they're higher value interactions.
Right. And I think value and frequency are very often inversely correlated.
Yes.
Right. Like it is extremely difficult to provide high value at high frequency. Right.
Yes.
How many cars does Pagani make a year? 7
Probably
or
very
something,
few.
like something ridiculous. Right. And you see that. And here's where you have to be careful, because scarcity doesn't equal value.
Yes.
Right. It's not like you're just going to post once a week because we're saying this, or you're going to interact online once a week because we're saying this. It's the time in between needs to be spent in building value behind you as a person. And if you do that, and I think what's a better way to phrase this? If you approach that conversation, if you approach that, whether it's creation or not creation, I think a lot of our energy needs to be spent on inhibition. I think that's where, like, it is difficult. I was walking through an airport yesterday in flying back from Denver, and thank God I'm not the person I used to be. And one of the things that has shaped that is the awareness over time of how my behavior, and this is predominantly in real life, how my behavior in real life has negatively affected my ability to move towards something that I really, really want or need, right? Like, I used to be, a relatively violent person. I have a fairly short fuse, and that, like, not a great combination. It feels good when you're doing it, and then, but you realize, like, I actually want to be like I had two athletes in my car. I was picking them up from the airport, and there's no worse version of me as a person. I'm going to share this with you. I am the worst version of myself when I am interacting with someone who polices the sidewalk outside of baggage claims at an airport. I am like, if you think of, like, if you watch things online and you think the people are hateful or vitriolic or angry or petty in the comment sections, that does not hold a candle to what goes inside in my brain, or goes on inside in my brain, when I am waiting to pick someone up at baggage claim in the airport, and someone with a fucking vest is standing there telling me to drive my car ahead 2 inches or drive in circles until this person comes out. Like, hey, you can't be here. Like, do you think I want to be here, dude? Do you think I want to be here at 1:30 in the morning waiting outside of baggage claims because the United flight was delayed 4 hours for my friend to get here? Like, the hostility and the rage and the murderous homicidal thoughts that I have about that person in the vest who approaches my window and taps on it with their finger would be enough that most good judicial systems would probably throw me in prison for thinking the thoughts that I think. So that's the superlative for me. I had two athletes in the car. We were waiting for a third. His flight was delayed, and I was going through and I was waiting. If I'm to snap in my life, and I've worked on not snapping because I understand the consequences of snapping and how it can affect, but, like, the most indulgent, and it is an indulgence, it's an indulgence. Reaction is an indulgence, right? If you want to fucking be disciplined, don't do the fucking repost with your goddamn stupid face over top of someone else. That's a reaction. That's fucking weak. You don't own your own thoughts when you do that. That person owns your thoughts. Get it together. Be a fucking adult. Use your head and exercise the energy it takes to not do something, right? That's indulgence. Reaction is weak. Think and then act. That's how you should move in real life. That's how you need to move on the internet. Regardless, two guys in the back of the car waiting on a third. Flight's delayed, waiting for a bit. This guy knocks on my window on some rental car and goes, "Oh, we're going to do this the adult way today. We're just going to remove $300 from your bank account." He called the cops and had me fined $300. Up until that point, he's like, "Hey, can you just, like, keep moving ahead?" So people are like, "Sure." Every couple minutes, he's like, he was nice, kind of like waving forward. And then some shift change happened. And this new guy walks up and says, "Oh, told you've been asked to leave a few times now. We're going to do this like an adult." the number of ways I wanted to kill this guy, bring him back to life just so I could kill him again. Right. Like I wanted to like send amputated parts of his body to his family members and in boxes. Like it's 3-4 days later, I'm so enraged by the person who takes it upon himself for no reason. He's like, oh, we're just going to take so I have a $300 fine that I have to pay through 6 rental cars because they flagged my thing. And this guy was just power. But I had 2 professional athletes in the back who are going to spend the X number of days with me, and I'm going to be training them, and I'm going to be talking to them about nutrition, and we're going to be going over injuries, and I'm going to be treating them. My hands are going to be around their neck. If I step out of line and I go off in, most of these guys fight. Like, these guys can throw hands, but they are still professional athletes, and they are held to a standard, right? They can't, even if they want to, because then it's all over the news. Mm-hmm. I need to be a professional like them. So as much as I want to, more than literally anything in my life, I would die for the opportunity to kill this man with my bare hands. And I sit there and go, oh yeah, sorry, man, no problem. Hey guys, we're just going to have to take a lap and we'll come back for buddy. I didn't speak for like an hour and a half. I just sat there and I tried to rip the steering wheel off of this car as a means of coping with the amount of anger I was under. But I did not indulge in that because I understand if I get out of the car with these 2 guys in the back, they're going to, and I won't notice it. I won't notice that these 2 guys in a group of like 20 guys, maybe don't come ask me the questions that they're going to ask me. And that robs me of ability to build a relationship. It robs me of my ability to provide the value that I've worked so hard to accrue to impart on other people, right? It's robbing me of the opportunity to do the thing that I love to do because I'm indulgent in the moment by getting out and cussing. And that's if you know me, how much restraint that took in that event shows you how much I value what I do. Because it's not even as much as I wanted to, and I had this, there was just a binary off switch of like, no, like you're not going to do it. Like by myself, I need to work on that. If they weren't in the car, but someone else was watching, 2 days when I flew back, I was waiting in line and some guy thought I cut him and he made a crack about my head tattoos. He was like, oh, because you have head tattoos, you do whatever you want. I was like, dude, I just respectfully, but I just paid more for my plane ticket than you do. I'm just in this line because I have this is my boarding zone. It says right here, and you're not in the boarding zone. So I'm not, but like how badly I wanted to headbutt him in the bridge of the fucking nose. But like, I don't want to do that because what I want, because you never know, the lady behind you, her son might be some fucking athlete. And then the lady behind me actually struck up a conversation with her. She's like, wow, you handled that really well. And I was like, oh, sir, respectfully, but like, I'm in this boarding zone. So it actually has nothing to do with my choices of getting tattoos or not. It has everything to do with the fact that I'm just in zone 1. And so I apologize that you feel this way. And the lady was like, I thought you were going to handle that a lot differently.
You look like a guy who would handle that a lot differently. I think that's what she said.
But what I got out of it was, and I'll never see this lady in my life, but I had a pleasant exchange that immediately reinforced the opportunity that I created for myself on the backs of showing restraint, on being reactive and impulsive, and sometimes it can be harder to see the things that you're not getting, right? Like it can be if I went and like cussed this guy out, I wouldn't have had the 15-minute conversation I had with the lady behind me. She told me about her son. Her son was in the military. He's getting into fitness. And she asked me what I did. That interaction was so much more meaningful to me than cussing out some fucking stupid old man. Like, what, or beat up an old man? Like, use real world examples to frame your digital etiquette, right? Like, how is it that you move in real life? And if you're not where you want to be, and I don't think you should ever be where you want to be. If you're not, and maybe we'll sample from another. What I think is, and I think both of these are actually, these are both quotes from. Oh, geez, I blanked on his name.
Winston Churchill.
Winston Churchill. So first one was manners maketh man, and the second one was true nobility is not being better than another man, but being better than your former self. I think those are actually both Churchill quotes. And that's what I look at, right? Like I look at me I remember walking through a bar once, and I thought I saw someone do something, and before I knew it, I had embedded the bottom ring of a Red Bull can into a guy's forehead. Right? Like what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you, dude? Like this guy's gonna have a permanent fucking circle on his forehead for the rest of his life because you thought you saw him do something. And it's like, and what opportunities did I lose as an 18-year-old? It's like, I don't know. Or yeah, I was probably 18. I don't know. But I can tell you what, the magnitude of the opportunities, the benefits of capitalizing on the opportunities that you're going to get the further you get along this. And on the flip side of that, the magnitude of the destruction that waits on the other side of the decisions you make that are inconsistent with the values, inconsistent with an etiquette that is true to you, those also magnify. Like I don't know what it's going to take to impart this on people. Like I can't go around punching teeth out, but like, God, there's so much there's more opportunity than people acting in a way or in a manner accordance or in a manner accordant with the ability to capitalize on it. It is a free market infested water of unbelievable opportunities if you know how to move correctly. Like reorient yourself to loss aversion over trying to gain likes and followers and shares. Like it's just it blows my mind. Like I don't know what do we call this podcast? Think? Like just fucking use your brain.
Fucking think. Yeah, there's a message that comes from that as well with the loss aversion. Is the examples that you just gave are very close to me as well, because I used to be like, when I was younger, I used to be a bit of a loose cannon too. Like I had a lot of friends that would fight, and we were a bunch of wrestlers, and we liked to drink, and we'd get in a lot of fights. And the message that I was sending is like, literally, I have nothing to lose. Like I will fight you because there's a fight going on. Like I have nothing to lose. I have no consideration. I have nothing inhibiting me from just throwing fists right now. Like if I get punched in the mouth, if I get stabbed, if I lose a tooth, like I don't give a fuck because I have nothing to lose, right? What is the message if you're on the internet posting like you have nothing to lose? The message I'm going to see is that, oh, this guy's not doing shit. He doesn't have anything to lose. Like, why would I fuck with someone that has nothing to lose? Like, you have nothing to give. And not necessarily that it's just like an interaction type based relationship. It's not you give me something, I give you something. There are those types of relationships in business, but more so the way we operate this business is there's a lot more to it than that. It's a lot of relationships, and that's the type of person that I don't necessarily need to have a relationship with, because that's someone that they're probably just going to drag you down, right? They're on a downward trajectory, a downward spiral, like I was at once in my life, until I found some purpose and I found some meaning. And now there's a lot of situations that I'm in that I don't even consider violence, as much as I love violence. But it's like that's so far down the list of where I'll let things escalate to, because I got a lot to lose right now. I told you the other day, like, life's better than it's ever been. And like, I'm really going to think before, like, if I get fucking stabbed and I'm in the hospital and I can't do the thing that I love, it's like, that's a loss for me, not just in terms of like, yeah, like it's probably not going to feel good to get stabbed, but like it's taking away the purpose from my life. It's taking away the things that get me out of bed every day and get me up and continue allowing me to do what I love. It's taking that away from me. So violence is so far down the list. And like, you can parallel that with any other indulgence on the internet, is like doing, I don't know, putting a horse mask on and going to the grocery store and jerking off on the apples. I don't know what fucking people do. I'm sure that's happened.
Going around.
I'm sure that's happened.
Trending right now, the old apple jerk off unicorn challenge.
Yeah. What message is that sending? It's like, oh, like, I don't need to fuck with this guy. This guy's like, he's a fucking on a list somewhere. But in a more serious sense, like, think about the message that you're sending with the way that you conduct yourself. Like, I have multiple Instagram profiles. I started a business one, and then I had a personal one when I started. And I post all my business stuff on my business one. I post more like dumb and like whatever, just my life shit on the other one. And they kind of merged into the same thing, because my life kind of merged into the same thing. So on a day-to-day basis, the persona that I take on in any interaction is one of professionalism first. So I will show you me as a professional before I show you me as the degenerate that I am. And not that I'm being disgenuine or I'm misleading people, but I conduct as anyone does, you conduct yourself in different ways in different scenarios. But I want to put my best foot forward when I'm introducing myself to potentially tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands or millions of people. Anyone has access to you on the internet. So I'm going to step forward with the side of me that I want to be seen first, right? And the reciprocal side of that is like, you as a person on the internet have not earned to see the personal side of me yet. So it's like, if you want to see me, look at me through this professional lens. If that's something that interests you and we have aligning interests, we can have a conversation and you could get to know the personal side of me. Like anyone that we work with, you get that side of me because you've been vetted through that professional lens, is that we have similar interests. Like it kind of funnels down the type of people that I would be interacting with in person. And then by the time we get to interact in person, like I'm going to be the unfiltered version of me. And I'm sorry about that, but I'm not going to change. So I'm not really sorry about that. I'm sorry for you, not for me. But at the same time, like I got shit to lose. And I'm not willing to lose it over an internet post. I'm not even willing to lose it in a fight on the middle of an intersection because someone cut me off. Like there's so many things that I'm going to go through to diffuse a situation or to change the interaction I have before I put myself in a situation to lose the things that I care about.
Mm. There's a couple of things I wanted to like point out because I know you on both sides, right? Like
Right.
I there's conversations that you and I have had that just being in business for as long as we've been in business for being through this, I think a big part of like whether it's school, and I think one of the things that prepared us well to go to business together was that we had a communal suffering through school. Right. And now we're like, hey, do you want to communally suffer for like another forever with a business? And so we've gone through that. And like, I know you on either side of the camera, so to speak. And I would say it's more of a volume switch where some people change the notes, right? Like it's a volume knob that you turn up and turn down, but you're still saying there's still the same notes of Jordan that you're just seeing or hearing, magnified or amplified, I guess would be a better term, on the internet, right? It's not like your particular progression of chords on the internet and a different progression of chords in real life. It's the same progression. You're just hearing it. Maybe you might be hearing it with a little distortion or a little bit more treble or a little bit more bass or a little bit more volume or a manipulation of all of those, but it's still the same core group of notes that comprises you as a person. So I think authenticity is a big part. I think, and even from a perspective of more just down the sustainability conversation. Because if you want to be successful on social media, whatever successful means to you, authenticity precedes sustainability, right? Yeah. Like I see that with you. I see, the more verbose, entertaining, calling people a bitch. I was like, not only will he say that to you, but he says way worse things to himself. Is what you guys don't. You fail to realize that. He'll call me. You'll interact with the client. They're gonna think you're being a bitch. But what do you think happens between rep 4 and 5 in his head? Like, the absolutely terrible things he's saying to himself. So authenticity is a prerequisite to sustainability. And you're an example of that. I will bring up Killian again. I think Killian's posting frequency says a lot about his authentic personality, right? As much as how frequent he posts is consistent with his method of communication, and not to say that he's sparse in communication, but he's spending the time in between fairly deep in thought. How do you know that? Because every post he puts up is like very deep in thought. A type of depth and thought that takes the amount of time it took between the previous post to think and synthesize, right? So, there's a lot to the nonverbal side of communication on the internet, which is hilarious because you're dampened to the reception of the nonverbals that happen in communicating in the internet, but the nonverbals are posting frequency, reposting, tagging, liking. These are all nonverbal modes of communication. This is your digital body language, and your digital body language says as much in the internet as it does in real life. Liking or not liking, reposting, tagging, phrasing relationships between people, whether it be authentic or not. Like, these are nonverbal communications in the digital space that, just like in real life, play a huge role in how your message is being perceived. So understand the digital nonverbals when you're establishing your etiquette. So that's thing number one, the idea of authenticity being the prerequisite to sustainability. And, authenticity itself is not the bedrock. It's actually the ceiling of a conversation of personal development and figuring out, well, what is authentic to you, to which we don't have time to get into today, but definitely something you should dig into if you're struggling, superimposing. And this isn't even a conversation for creators. This is a conversation for people, right? This is a conversation for people on the internet, because the internet, and it's like that meme of the guy in the war that looks back and says, hey, you know how I said it was going to get worse? It's getting worse now. It's like that. That's me and Jay right now looking at you and be like, you might want to get your relationship with the digital amplified avatar of yourself and your values very aligned, and work on a system that ensures future alignment into the future, or assures alignment into the future, because the pitch, rate, and tone frequency of these interactions and the consequences, like you mentioned, of the dissidence of these interactions is growing at a rate that you don't respect. It's growing at a rate internally, because as you get older, you have more of responsibility, and more people are going to look to you as someone who hopefully has established a good reputation. Your reputation becomes more valuable, but equal with the value becomes equal with fragility. Your reputation becomes more fragile the more your reputation is valued. And guess what? The more your reputation becomes valued, the more your reputation is going to be susceptible to people trying to tear it down. I think of one of my indulgences is politics. I try to stay fairly in the know with politics. Shout out Michael Woodbury. Michael Woodbury is one of my favorite people on the planet. He's a chiropractor. He's a family man. He loves dogs. He loves training. And he does such a good job in every aspect of his life. And one of the things he's particularly into is politics. So Woodbury and he keeps me informed, and it's an indulgence for me. And I think of a lot of political commentators that I like, and I think about cancel culture, and I think about, obviously at scale, like these guys are, like a Douglas Murray, for example, or a Ben Shapiro or a Sam Harris. These guys are fairly contentious political commentators. If any of you have a particular affinity for world politics and like sort of the commentator culture that exists on the sideline, what has saved some very outspoken people on the internet is having a collection of concise, valuable, centered, authentic thoughts that exist cached in perpetuity forever. So if, like you said, on a resume, yes, you have this resume of your profile, but a resume is also in some ways a circumvitae or a CV of all the things you've done. A resume is like a very brief one pager. Your CV over time, it grows, right? Like, my CV is I go in every 6 months and I update it of like all the things that I've done. And I do that. And it's funny because how I write my CV is I go on my Instagram. I go through my stories and I go through my calendar and I go, where the fuck have I been in the last 6 months? What have I done? Right. And then I start to see where I go to my Instagram first. I'm like, okay, in June, I was in this place. Forgot about that. I was in, I don't even know where was I in June. I was in Tampa in June for a little bit. I was like, okay. So I would go to my CV and I would be like, Prescript level 3 coaching course. And I would write both weeks in succession and I would write my role in it. So, in my resume, it just says founder, co-founder, Prescript RX Radio. That's my resume. But then I go through my CV and then it's like every seminar I've ever done, everything on below that tip of the iceberg, that job that I want, the opportunities I want, all the stuff that I haven't posted about, that's like your CV. Now, what I wanted to touch on that you kind of like shone some light on was the idea of nothing to lose, because there's the hardest part. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it was definitely something that I felt in transitioning out of being more of a degenerate to less of a degenerate and trying to do that every single day, is the actions or the inactions need to change before you have something to lose. That's how you acquire things. And that's the hardest part. And that's where I think, like, you know, meeting you and getting to know you over the years and watching someone who comes from a very similar, almost analogous, scary, similar background, be able to make the better decision helps me because I know your past. And I think, man, we're cut from the same cloth. He was able to overcome these impulses at a time where he still had, there was a point where you woke up and were like, I'm not going to punch this guy in the head. I'm going to go to school. It's going to affect my ability to go to school. But you're in the same shit town. You're with your same, you know, your same degenerate friends there. But there was a day where you made a decision to not indulge. And that starts the cascade of improving your circumstances. And the reason I like hearing that from you is because if I heard it from some fucking monk, I'd be like, yeah, dog, but what do you know? Right. So it's like, and this is where, and look, not everyone grows up in scrappy neighborhoods, and some people not relate, and that's fine. And if you don't want to take this and you want to go find the inspiration elsewhere, then that's cool too. But like, you have to understand, and this is something that even still again, because I want to look back at the point in our lives now, like I do look like as I look back on 10 years ago now, in 10 years from now, I want to look back here and see that same relative position. So as good as things are for us now compared to they were 10 years ago, I'm projecting them to get better, which means our current situation is worse. So what I need to do every day is I need to figure out, like, okay, where am I being indulgent? Where do I need to forego that indulgence and scratching that itch so that I create these opportunities to continue to snowball for me, right? What are the things that I'm acting on impulsively so that in 10 years from now, I look back and think I got here because I wasn't, not because I wasn't happy with where I am, but I needed to operate like I have something bigger to lose than what I have. Right. Yeah. And and that's the only way you get to bigger things is there's that transition period. And I see where people's growth, whether in their business or personally, stop because it's the point where they no longer operate like what they have is worth losing. Right. And they don't make that sacrifice to be like, hey, I'm going to not be indulgent. I'm going to not do this. And this action of inaction will start to snowball these events and these opportunities so that in 10 years I can look back and I can be like, hey, this is a similar delta, right? Like a change in a change in position. This is the same trajectory continued from 2024 back to 2014 into 2034. These gross mile markers can be the same, but I understand now in a position where I'm far less impulsive to fight the guy at the airport. But it's like, okay, what is the equivalent indulgence that I'm undertaking that's going to stunt my ability to grow equally in another decade?
I fucking love that point. And that's one of the very first business books I read. I think it was called Good to Great. I think it was Tim Collins that wrote it.
I remember you talking about this.
Dude, yeah, it left an impact on me because it's a powerful quote, is that the enemy of great is good. And you're not going to get past good if you accept good enough, right? There's going to be a point where good enough is not good enough. And that's where your actions and inactions have to change so that you can start to act in accordance with what is great. What is your version of great? And that's going to be delayed gratification. It's going to be a fuck ton of work, especially the further you are along. Like if you're in a really shitty situation, like it's not very hard to get into a less shitty situation. But if you're in a good situation, there's a lot of comfort there. It's going to be really difficult to change to get that last 10% to get from good to great or to make a really meaningful change in your situation. And it sounds like that's a lot what you're talking about. It's like if you're in a position like we're doing all right. Like if we're doing well and like we're like, you know what, this is it. Like this, I'm okay. I'm comfortable here. Then progress stops right there because your actions start to align with maintaining where you're at, as opposed to, or like even, I think you can draw a parallel to like any sporting event. Like wrestling is close to my heart, but like if I had a 2-point lead and I'm in a wrestling match and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna play defense. I'm gonna try and ride out this lead and kind of run down the clock. Then now that puts me in a position to lose the match because he's in offense. He's got something to lose. And I mean, he's already lost. Sorry, he's got nothing to lose. I have something to lose. So he's in a position where I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to take what I can get. And that's going to put me in a position where now I could lose this match because I've pulled back off the throttle, as opposed to if I'm like, all right, I'm only up by 2. There's a minute left in the match. I'm going to score another takedown, and I'm going to get some back points, and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to be relentless until that clock stops. That's a whole different mindset. It's like I'm in the pursuit of great. I'm not 2-point lead is not good enough. Like I want 4. I want 6. I want to pin this motherfucker before the clock's up. So I think that's a really good point. That's really valuable for people to take a look into their mindset and their actions and be like, well, all right, this is what I want, but are my actions actually aligning with that? Because it is something that you're going to have those actions in place for a long period of time before you get to that next point.
Yeah, I think one of the things that catalyzes this analogous behavior on the internet, either for better or for worse, when people go to make a decision on how to, conduct themselves and impart their interpretation of digital cultural etiquette online, is gratitude. And it's like, again, I'm not like a meditation app kind of guy. A lot of times I hold this in a great vote of confidence that I'll share this with the podcast listeners who are still listening after an hour and 10 minutes. Sometimes my expression for gratitude is like if I'm waiting for an Uber and it can't drive to the blue dot and I'm sitting there and I'm tired, right? I'm exhausted. I'm in somewhere where I don't have my vehicle and I'm relying on someone else to get there. And, maybe I'm in a country that they don't speak English and I don't know, I can't ask anyone and I don't know where this fucking guy is. And he's sending me messages and I see the blue dot and where this guy is. I'm like, just drive to the blue dot, homie. Sometimes my version of gratitude is, one, thank God I'm in a position where I can financially, support myself enough where someone else can come pick me up and bring me. And 2, I don't have the temperaments to drive Uber for a living, nor am I in a situation where I have to, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for someone else to be doing this job. It's not exactly like the best, most kumbaya version of gratitude, but it pulls me away. So when the guy pulls up to the thing, hey man, what's going on? I said, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, a little confusing. I'm not from here. All good. And it's the inaction, right? Like, the inhibitory process versus the excitatory process. Like spend energy on restraining yourself from that indulgence. And I think before you hit post or repost or comment or tag or like, or, there's another side to the internet too, is like you can actually bring positivity to the table, right? Like I've had people comment back and forth on like posts that I've made that are like a little bit technical. And someone like asked a question that could be defaulted as like, this guy's trying to talk shit, but maybe he's genuine. And I've had people like, go through and exhibit their particular set of etiquette in the comment section. And I've seen them on my post go back and forth in a dialogue and it be positive and impactful and mutually beneficial, and a conversation and a new idea has emerged. I've registered some of those people into level 1 course for free. Because there's always this weird point at the end of a sales cycle where we're like, oh, course starts tomorrow. And then I have Anna put in all the people that I've let in for free. And we have like 5 or 6 more people in the course. And sometimes I assign those people, like I'll just DM them like, man, that was really cool how you guys just had that conversation. I don't know if you know what we do, but I teach and I'm part of this company that, teaches applied biomechanics and functional anatomy. And we do continuing education in the fitness space. If you ever want a seat in one of our courses, I want people like you in our midst. And they're like, oh my God, really? I wanted to take L1 for like 3 years. I was like, okay, cool. What's your email? Done. Like, there is like, we've talked about this loss aversion, but there's like a whole another podcast about just fucking positivity. Right. And so for me, it's like, I talk to these people who discuss in my purview and they discuss professionally and they are emblematic of people who have something to lose. And what they are set to gain is a relationship, or what they're set to gain is unknown to them, and they fucking do it anyways. Yeah. Right. And they do it and sometimes they do it without any want or thought or care of reciprocation, which I think is one of the fundamental conversations that we haven't had yet, that we might not have, is doing things because you can. Right. Like the number of times that things will cross my desk and it's drama or it's shit talking or it's he said, she said. And I'm like, I have an opportunity right now for this thing to die. I have an opportunity to take this in and it be the end. And just to let it go in my brain. And if I let it go and I don't go text someone or call someone or, write something, or if I don't react, this thought, this bundle of words that make emotional responses in people, likely negative, can leave the planet forever and fail to. And all I have to do is just go, okay, and you just let it go, and it weighs nothing on me, and you just learn to just be like, oh, I've heard this, and that's I feel like this person is telling me, so I go and do this, or act a certain way, or react a certain way, or post something, or write something, or whatever, and I just think about it for like 2 seconds, and I go, or I could just disappear it out of my head, and I do that, and then this energy, this force of negativity, of perpetual degradation, of inauthenticity, it just goes away. And you can do that. You can do that every day. You can choose
powerful.
to, like, here's stuff. It's so like it will literally save your life. But again, like, you just got to understand that we have evolved to be products of our environment. It's quite literally one of the tenets of evolution. But you can control your environment, right? So you can control how you evolve as a person. All you need to do is change your environment. If you change, it's a famous Wayne Dyer quote. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Or if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. But there's like levels to that, right? Because it's not about changing your perspective. Sometimes you can quite literally change your orientation to those things. Like, I'm going to, like, travel for me is obviously a big one. Or, setting constraints around your environment, setting constraints around your digital footprint of, like, I'm going to unfollow this person. I'm going to block this person. And I've changed my views on blocking people over time, because it's like, no. I what has changed my views on blocking people? My respect for what this does. I didn't respect. We did a podcast before. I'm like, don't only block people if you're willing to kill them in real life. I remember saying that on the show. And something that I've changed my stance on is I will block people now because I respect the power of this. And I respect how this is such an ever-present part of my environment that I can control or be controlled by it. And you curate that environment and you curate your own evolution.
That's huge. Yeah. If the second someone changes my headspace to something I don't want it to be online, like, they're at least on mute, if not like unfollow. Like, there's very few people I block. But if it's an issue, like, yeah, fuck you. But, like, I'm so ready to interact with less people. Like, give me a reason.
Right. And I'm gonna paint the other side of that, because you are so much more ready to interact with the select few people that you fuck with.
Right. Absolutely.
Right?
I want to free up that bandwidth for the people that put me in a positive headspace, the people that I want to interact with.
Yeah. And both they deserve it and you deserve it.
Word.
Do something for yourself today and unfollow people you don't like. Change your environment, and you'll change your outlook. Social media decorum. Think about it. If you guys haven't, if you find yourself in the throes of the digital space without a compass, create your own digital etiquette that's authentic, that's consistent, that allows you to grow and evolve, and maybe you get some positivity out in the world, and that's not a terrible thing either.
Yeah, and move like you've got something to lose.
There you go. Fuck, what an ending. All right, that was good. Not bad.
We did all right. Yeah.
I like that one. I like that.
Yeah.
Listen to us. Listen to us pat ourselves on the back. No, all right. Well, appreciate you guys hanging out. We're not going to sell anything this week or anything. Just go, I don't know, do the whole thing. Call your mom or whatever. Move correctly, as it were. Yeah, that's it for me. Anything before next week?
No, that's it. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you
next week.